Hey everyone, my name's Jesse Haugen, and this is a YouTube Q&A. Question 1! Alright, John Hatch on my Discord server, which if you haven't joined, you should absolutely join. It's completely free. It's a community of a bunch of composers, all just trying to get better at what we do. I'm super active on there, and there is a link in the description of this video. He asks, it would be cool to hear more about how you approach recording a live orchestra. Like, how you go about preparation, and maybe lessons learned, things to look out for, etc. I know that's kind of a broad topic, but it just pooped into my mind. Yes, it pooped into his mind. That was a typo, but I was not going to let that slide because that's going to be a new thing that we say now. Things poop into our mind. So, studio session preparedness. Let's talk a little bit about it. Preparation cannot be overstated. These sessions often are super high stakes. They are expensive, and a lot can be riding on them. So it would be irresponsible for you to not be overly prepared. And so what needs to happen for you to actually go into these sessions confidently and ready to go? First thing, and this one might seem kind of obvious, but you need to get your music approved. I can't tell you how many times I have been involved in sessions with other composers or projects where it's obvious that the music wasn't approved, and for whatever reason, the composer, director, producer, or whoever was just sort of expecting that to get solved on the day. And while maybe in a room with the orchestra or the ensemble or whatever, things can be inspiring and you can find the answer to that question that you've been searching for months, counting on all of your disagreements and musical puzzles to be solved with a live orchestra in the room is just not the way to go. You want to get things to a place where they are approved, everyone is happy, and what you're going to be doing in the session is elevating that music, not solving problems necessarily, but simply making it better. Now, you can have a little bit of a suspension of disbelief with the director and producer and say, hey, I know that this sounds this way now, but once we get in with the live orchestra, it's really going to change and it's going to be a little bit more like this. And if you have a trusting relationship and you do know how to manage those expectations and you actually are confident that what you're saying is going to happen will happen, you can do that. But at the end of the day, you want things to be basically fully approved before you record. Now, once that music is approved, there's a lot of practical, technical preparation things that you need to do to actually prepare for the session. And the first thing that you need to do is prepare an actual session file or materials for a session file that you'll use in the Pro Tools session at the studio. So you can either build a Pro Tools session, and if you build a Pro Tools session, you need to build it with all of the audio files that you need for playback. So that's the things that they're going to be playing over, but also everything that you're replacing. So if you're recording an orchestra, you need to have audio files of all your sampled instruments, not individual, probably grouped together in like strings, brass, woodwinds, or however you want to group them. So that you can reference in real time in the session if you need to what the samples were doing and make sure that you're getting what you need to get with the live people. Another thing you want to make sure is that your tempos and time signatures are all correct. One of the things that I've gotten the habit of doing is obviously you can set all of that in the Pro Tools session, but I also will print an audio click and just throw that in the session as well, just in case something is weird. If you have a printed audio click that matches up with your printed stems from whatever DAW you were using, you'll have a good frame of reference to go on if, you know, last ditch effort, you just need to record something using just the audio files. Now, sometimes when you're recording, maybe you don't have the ability to build a Pro Tools session or you don't have time, I'll actually export a MIDI file from Cubase. And the way that I do this, I just create an empty MIDI track. I do a region that spans the duration of the whole session for the cue or the project or whatever, and I put just one MIDI note, bar one, beat one, and then when you export that MIDI file, when you import that into Pro Tools at the studio, it'll come in with all of your tempos, all of your time signature information, and it should match up with the stems that you exported. But again, you want to actually check that this is the case. So if you don't have Pro Tools, send it to a friend who has Pro Tools and say, hey, when you pull in these audio stems, when you pull in this MIDI file, does everything look right? Does everything line up? You don't want to get into the session and find out, shit, nothing lines up. That is just my worst case scenario. I have literal nightmares about that. So yeah, so that's how you prepare the session, the other thing you need to do is actually prepare the sheet music, or the music that will go on the music stands that the musicians will read. And this, I'm incredibly passionate about this. That sheet music needs to be outrageously perfect. Sheet music is how you communicate to the musicians what you need them to accomplish. Sessions are often too short and there's too much music to record in them. And if your sheet music is efficient and clear and thorough, you are going to be able to get everything done. If it's not, you're going to have to do a lot more talking, which takes up a lot of time. And in the worst case scenario, you're actually going to have to correct things, which takes up even more time. So if you're going to obsess over anything, obsess over making perfect, thorough sheet music. And if you're curious about this and want to know a little bit more about what goes into that, I actually did a 3-part video series. I'll link them here. And the first video goes over how I prepare the MIDI in my session for creating sheet music. The second one actually shows me creating the sheet music. And then the third one is the result recording the orchestra. Do a deep dive on that. Figure out exactly how to make the best possible sheet music, and it will just save you so much headache in those sessions. Now, once I've created that sheet music, you need to either print it yourself or send it to the print house if you have that in the session that you're doing, or you need to put it in a Dropbox link and have it separated by part for the musicians so that you can send it to them if they're using iPads, and then they can just pull it up and read it on their iPads. Another thing I've noticed, just a small thing, if you're doing the iPad thing, typically they really like AirDrop. So if you put it into the folders on Dropbox, if you just pull it up on your iPhone and just AirDrop it to them, they, for whatever reason, at least the people I've worked with, just really like that. So yeah, have an Apple device of some kind and be able to AirDrop it to them. Now, in terms of lessons learned, these are just some simple things. One of them is make sure your bar numbers in the sheet music or the score match the bar numbers in the sessions. And if you're not responsible for making the session, like maybe you're orchestrating for another composer or you did some string arrangements on a pop song or something, you need to check with the producer or the engineer that that's the case. I did a session late last year where I didn't do this and our bar numbers were off. Sometimes it was as many as 18 bars. Sometimes it was like 7 bars. And basically at the beginning of every track we were doing, I had to really quickly do math to figure out how many bars we were off so that I could communicate to the musicians, okay, I'm going to tell you guys bar 17, but that's actually bar 36 in the Pro Tools session. So I was telling different bar numbers to the recording engineer and to the musicians, and just handling that and getting that straight in my brain in an already stressful situation is just a nightmare. So make sure those match and are perfectly in line. You need to know your music really well. It helps to know your music really well so that if you hear something wrong or if someone asks a question, you're not spending a bunch of time looking down at your score and studying, but you actually know what they're talking about and can find it quickly and give a solution, or be open to trying new things. And you'll be more willing and able to do that if you have a really good knowledge of what's already there and what you could change to maybe address a producer note or something. Or if someone says, hey, can you make this more energetic? You'd know, okay, my cellos are just doing whole notes in this cue. Maybe we can have them like chug some eighths or something like that. One of the biggest lessons I've learned doing sessions with live musicians is that simple works. When you're dealing with samples, it kind of helps to make things more complicated and intricate. It makes the music feel a little more special. But when you're in a room with real musicians, if you just have them play whole note chords, holy cow, it will make you cry. And so like, be willing to keep things maybe simpler than you would otherwise, because every note goes a lot further when you're dealing with live musicians. And the final thing I'll say is just trust your musicians. The reality is that these musicians record music a lot more than you do, and know their instruments better than you do. And so when they have recommendations or when they think things, listen to them. And if you have questions or you want to know if something's working or if it could be improved, just ask them. They're super willing to help you, super willing to collaborate with you on getting the best possible result. And that actually takes us to our second question, which I think is a really, really interesting question. And the question is from Evie Ashton, also in my Discord server. And she asks, something that poops into my mind, I told you it was going to be a thing, is just about how to get along with the musicians when it comes to writing slightly more challenging music. What is the balance between getting the sound and perhaps complexity you want, whilst not having them roll their eyes at you and grumble? And then she adds, session orchestras are scary. This is such a good question. Some of the most stressful situations of my life have revolved around this exact problem, and I do have thoughts about this, but I thought it would be interesting and helpful if we started with the perspective of one of these session musicians. And so my wonderful friend Kiara agreed to record a video answer to this question herself. Kiara is a violist, a session musician and performer all over LA and the world. She's played with everyone on everything. I've had the immense pleasure of working with her in some of the coolest studios in LA and also some of the most amazing venues, including her own personal studio with her string quartet, Orchid Quartet, who are just an amazing group of performers and artists that I love working with. So here's her answer to this question.
Hi, my name is Kiara, and I'm a session violist and violinist based in Los Angeles. I'm the violist of the string quartet, Orchid Quartet, and I'm also a freelance string player for sessions and for tours and just lots of stuff. So this is a great question about complexity of music within the setting of an orchestra session. And I think for us as players, it can also be a scary and overwhelming place because we don't usually know what we're walking into when we get to a session. We often don't have the music beforehand. Sometimes that's different, but generally speaking, we don't get the music beforehand. And so it's a experience for us as well. And the muscle of sight reading is one that we really have to practice and like flex a lot all the time. So when there's really complex orchestral music that we have to record, it's very common and it can be scary, but it's okay because that's what our job is. And in sessions, it's our job to pull together what the vision of the composer and what the music calls for. So it's okay if it's complex, and it can take a little bit of time in the studio sometimes, and that's okay too. So yeah, complex music is sometimes what's needed, and we just try to get the job done so that the composer and the scene or whatever the music is served in the best way by the players, seeing through the composer's idea that they needed.
So yeah, hopefully that insight from her is helpful. It's invaluable to get the perspective of an actual musician on this question, I think, because it does have so much to do with them and their experience with this exact situation. From my perspective as the composer or the arranger on these sessions, it really comes down to preparedness again. I know I keep talking about being prepared, but the reality is in some situations, it's just not appropriate for you to push the boundaries and go beyond what's acceptable, idiomatic, or possible. If you don't have enough time, you don't want to waste time doing super challenging music. Again, like I said earlier, simple works. And so if it can be avoided, I would just say write music that's idiomatic, that falls into what is easily playable and digestible for the musicians, and you will just get such a better result. Now, that doesn't really answer the question because the answer I just gave is avoid the problem. If you do want to push the boundaries and it is appropriate, you know you're going to have time, the best thing I can say is just trust your musicians. Again, they know better than you what is possible. And if you show them in humility that you're willing to work with them to achieve what you want, it's not that you're demanding something from them. If you show that you're in it with them and you want to work with them to accomplish the goal, they're going to be a lot more willing to help you get there. That could look like just, wood shedding, getting it down, doing 50 takes and nailing it. Or it could look like maybe they have a recommendation for, hey, instead of doing this crazy string 30-second ostinato thing, what if we dovetail this between violin ones and violin twos and we make it a little bit easier, or instead of this like crazy flurry of notes, what if we did trills that kind of change notes every once in a while? They're going to have recommendations that will help you get the result that you're after, but maybe in a way that's just more idiomatic for their instrument. So trust them, work with them, and just be willing to collaborate, and that goes a long way for this situation. Do not be scared of them. These musicians are artists. They're some of the most amazing people I've ever known, and they want just as much as you do for the session to go well and for you to get the best possible result in your music. So yeah, please in the comments below, thank Kiara. She's amazing. Hire her. I put a link to her stuff in the video description. And yeah, just shower her with thanks because it's an amazing insight. We're so thankful for you, Kiara. Thank you. All right, our next question comes from Instagram, and it's from JD Neal. And he asks, what that thing do? Okay, Orion Studios on my Discord server asks, what DAW do you use and why do you use it? If you watched my videos before, you know that I use Cubase, and I use it for a number of reasons. I was actually in Logic for years, and there was a time when I was assisting another composer who was in Cubase, and so for every day for about 2 years, I used Cubase at his studio on his projects. Then I would come home and do the second half of the day in Logic on my projects, and working in both really gave me a kind of one-to-one comparison. And what I found over those 2 years was I was getting faster and faster and faster in Cubase and starting to become attached to the things Cubase did well, and kind of starting to get a little grumpy about Logic and my results in Logic. And so I just realized Cubase is so much faster with sequencing and your ability to edit MIDI and macros and things like that. And it just, yeah, I just became so much faster, and that time is so valuable that I eventually switched. And one of the other weird things I realized, and I thought this was in my head, and maybe it is in my head, but I had the exact same sample libraries. I would do them in Cubase, and then I would do them in Logic, and I just feel like Cubase sounds better. I don't know if there's like analog emulation going on in the Cubase mixer, but I feel like my stuff in Cubase sounds better than my stuff in Logic did. Again, that could be in my head, but it got in my head and I couldn't get past it. So that was another reason. And then the final reason is the template building abilities in Cubase. I just put out a video about that as well, which you should watch. Is just amazing. Watch that video and you'll see what I'm talking about. Building templates in Cubase is the best DAW to build templates in. Alrighty, another question from Instagram. Ashley Dean asks, what is your process like for scoring a project? I'll be pretty broad here, but generally after we negotiate a deal and I know that I'm going to be doing it, we'll have a spotting session where we go through the film or the game or whatever, and we decide where we're going to have music and what we want that music to be. And that process is like maybe the most important part, to try to get a really clear direction from the director or the producer. And if they have reference tracks, that's helpful, or a temp score. If they don't, just try to find the key of what they're looking for and make a really cohesive plan. And then at that point, I actually like to step away for quite a while and do something that has, come back to bite me in the past, but I still think is my preferred way of doing it. I like to write a ton of music. So if it's a short film, I might score the entire film before I show them anything. This has been a problem in the past, because if I get it wrong, now I have to redo the entire film. But for me, I feel like when I have the opportunity over a long course of time to like flesh out an idea and really just dig in and go for it, it helps my process. And then at that point, I'll communicate to them, hey, if this is wrong, it's okay. Like, I can rewrite everything. But hopefully there's something in there over the course of that film that we've found that we can use as an anchor point moving forward. So I send it to them, I get notes from them, and then we just rinse and repeat that process, collaborating together, always recognizing it is a collaboration. It's not just me imposing my artistic vision on their project, but actually trying to accomplish their artistic vision in collaboration with them. And then hopefully they end up loving it and we get it recorded, mix it, deliver it, and off to the races. All right, Jay Maloney on my Discord server asks, when you're starting a project, how do you get all of the time signatures / tempo figured out in the DAW? Is it something you find beats to in the film that helps break it down? Is there ever a place for using free tempo and then figuring out tempo / timing later when it comes to orchestrating and recording it with a live orchestra? I, back in the day, would spend a lot of time doing like crazy tempo changes and time signature changes to just hit everything as much as possible. And I don't know if this is just a personal taste change or if in general scores have kind of gone more this way, but I nowadays like to try to keep it more simple than that. I usually will try to find like one tempo that will work for an entire scene. And if that means I don't get every single hit point, that's okay. I don't need to Mickey Mouse everything. But if there is really important stuff, if I need to adjust a tempo here or there, do a weird time signature to get it to land, I do that. But then when I write it, I try to make it sound super cohesive. I don't want you to hear that. I want it to feel inevitable and intentional and not like contrived or manufactured, if that makes sense. I don't always achieve that, but that's what I try to do. And then the other thing I'll say is I generally like to kind of do it as I go. I don't like to go through and like map it all out. Boom, 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 like hit here, hit here, hit here, hit here. I typically will be like, all right, let's like look at the first 30 seconds and get a sense of what I want, get the tempo of what that is, find the tempo that's close to that tempo that feels right for the scene, and then go. And then as we go on, maybe I find the first hit point, do that, map out the next little bit, and then go. I try to kind of write it in real time as I'm tempo mapping. That way I don't feel like I'm like stuck in this cage of tempos and hit points. It's something that I used to stress a lot about and that people always ask me about. And you just don't need to stress about it that much. I know that feels like a non-answer, but just focus on making the music and watch a lot of films and see what they're doing, and you'll realize more often than not, it's pretty simple. And then finally, the last part of that question was, is there a place for using free tempo and then figuring it out later? I work with a composer who does that a lot, and it drives me insane. I mean, he gets amazing results with it. I don't like doing it very much. It just causes so much work on the back end. I would so much rather to just choose a tempo, and I can like be loosey-goosey within that. But the work of trying to re-tempo map after you've done that is just, especially with MIDI, is just like, it's just too much work. Just pick a tempo and exist in it. Again, if you want to push and pull within that, that's fine. But don't like push and pull, do something free, and then go back and try to like crazy tempo map stuff. If it's going to be free, just let it be free and accept like maybe you're not recording the strings on that one or something. Again, this is just my personal belief. Do whatever the fuck you want. But yeah, that's me. All right, second to last question. Leanne on my Discord server asks, what is more useful for a composer in your opinion? Learning music theory or learning to play the piano? If both are important, what do you start learning first? So basically, I'm going to not think about this specifically with piano, but I'm going to frame it more as like, is it more important to learn music theory or the study, the framework of music, or to learn how to actually play music proficiently on an instrument? Obviously, both are incredibly important, and if you can do both, you should do both. But if I had to say what is more important, I'll simply say that music is something that's played. Music can't exist outside of being performed or listened to. And so given that that's like actually what you do with music, being proficient on an instrument, learning to speak the language of music through actually playing it is probably the most important thing. And finally, a fun question from George Stryker on Instagram. He asks, what is music? At the risk of being a little bit pretentious, there's a piece by John Cage called 4 minutes and 33 seconds or 4:33. You've probably heard about it. If you haven't, basically the performer goes on stage, opens or closes the piano lid, I can't remember which, doesn't play anything for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and then stands up and takes a bow. And the idea behind this kind of stunt or piece of music is that the music was what you were hearing in the room. It was the coughs of the people watching. It was people shifting in their chairs. It was the air in the room, people opening and closing doors, basically making the argument that music is all around us. It's in everything that we hear. I kind of vibe with that. It's a little bit abstract. For me, when I was in high school, I tried to answer this question, and I was, I guess, obsessed with alliteration. So the answer I came up with high school was, music is pitch in pattern with purpose. Basically meaning it's a variation in high and low frequency in some pattern. It doesn't need to be a repeated pattern, but an intentional placement of those frequencies, and with purpose. It's something made for a reason or to be experienced, which is, you know, why I think 433 might actually be a piece of music, because it's with the intent purpose of being music. It's not, you know, just you going outside and being like, oh, listen to this music of like the cars driving by. I don't necessarily think it would be wrong to say that, but I think the purpose aspect of it means a lot and makes it important. But at the end of the day, I mean, who knows? I don't know. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like the video if you like it, and I'll see you in the next one. Good God.